Interstate Awning, the best awnings under the sun. We have over 12 years experience designing and installing custom awnings. We serve commercial, residential, and boats, offering vinyl, canvas, metal, backlit awnings, retractable awnings, custom signs, and entrance canopies. Whatever your needs are for protection from the sun and making your world a little cooler, we're here for you. For a free estimate, call Interstate Awning today or visit us online.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome you all this evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Melanie Eisen. I work for the Sullivan County Anti-Drug Coalition. I'm the prevention coordinator there. And this evening, as you know, we're going to talk a lot about vaping. We're going to touch on some topics about nicotine addiction and why that's important. We're also going to talk a little bit about how to talk to your teens about substance abuse. That's sometimes a difficult topic, and just talking to teens in general is a difficult thing to do. So, and then Officer Camper, thank you for inviting me this evening too, is going to talk a lot about some other substances, real interesting stuff. So we've got a lot to cover tonight, so we'll go ahead and get started. So you've probably heard in the news quite a bit lately about the epidemic that has become vaping with our young people. If you are here in the school, you've probably seen it. And as this graph shows, this covers 2011 to 2015, so that's not even really recent information because I can guarantee you that e-cigarette use compared to cigarette use is off the charts. Our last survey data that we had here locally showed that around 4% of our teens were using cigarettes, whereas it was a little bit over 16% were using e-cigarettes. And so there's a huge difference, and the vaping, the e-cigarettes have become quite an epidemic. There's different variations, and e-cigarettes have changed over the last few years. They've not been around for very long, and as you can tell, the first one here was looked like a cigarette kind of. It had the same shape, the same feel. They continue to evolve into some vape pens. You've probably seen the mods where it's kind of got the big canister and lets off a big flume of smoke when they exhale. And then the pod base. So the pod base are the newest type of e-cigarette, the ones that our teens tend to use the most. Products like Juul are very, very popular. They look like USB drives. They're kind of long sticks that look like you just plug them up to your computer to save stuff. And this is what they're mostly using. These are also some other popular pod-based systems. We've got the Soren, the Fix. Again, looks very similar to the Juul. The difference in these e-cigarettes compared to regular cigarettes is that they have very high nicotine content. So the Juul pods contain approximately 1 pack equivalent of cigarettes of the nicotine. So that's 59 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine in just one of those teeny little Juul pods. The Fix is even higher, so it's approximately 2 packs of cigarettes equivalent, and the Soren even more. And so the mods, what we call your mom and dad's vape, the mods, you're able to put the different liquids in it, so they may not contain as much nicotine as the salt-based nicotine devices, which are pre-filled, and they come already ready to go with this high nicotine content. So what is in these e-cigarettes? That is a lot of debate there. What is in them? They are, it's not water vapor. It is an aerosol. There are lots of different compounds and particles in these devices, especially the ones that have flavoring. So there are things like diacetyl. The flavorings have mostly been FDA approved, and that's what you hear a lot. Well, that's FDA approved. Yes, for intake into your stomach. I mean, it's a food additive, so it definitely acts a lot different in your stomach than it would to be inhaled into your lungs. One of the flavorings that is diacetyl can cause something you might have heard, popcorn lung, that's directly related to that. That is a chemical that is used to flavor microwave popcorn, and it's used in these e-cigarettes to kind of make them taste kind of buttery and stuff. So inhaling that can cause some real lung damage that's permanent. So the other things that have been popping up in these pods, you might have heard just recently, this came out I think a week ago, of some modifications. THC is being put in the mods, in the little pods that they put in there. There was a place, and it's Bristol, Wisconsin actually. I was like, oh, Bristol, where they busted a very large ring of where these guys were taking the little pods and filling them up with THC oils and then selling them on the black market. So that is something that is very scary. I think that these different pods, even if they're not containing THC, if they're on the black market, or the kids don't know where they're coming from, maybe they get them at a cheap discount, then there's no telling what might be in those. And the other thing too to realize is that just recently the CDC has released a report that there has been a sudden severe onset of pulmonary diseases, and again, this has been all over the news, where there has been reported 6 deaths so far, and at least 450 cases that have been confirmed related to vape. These were all young adults, teens, all previously healthy, and suddenly they came down with these pulmonary illnesses, which were collapsed lungs and some other things that landed in the hospital for a very long time and resulted in permanent lung damage. This is one of the most important things that I think that we stress to our teens and to our young adults, because this is not, this may happen sometime down the road. This is an immediate consequence. This is happening right now, and they're not sure why. They're not sure if it's related to some flavorings that have been in it or some THC. I even saw something that they're vaping vitamin E oil. I'm not sure why, but that might also be related. They're still trying to figure that out. So why are our teens using these products so much? Why has there been such an increase, such an interest in these products? And some of those reasons are the flavorings. So they are flavored with, candy kind of names. There's mango, there's bubble gum, and gummy bear, those type of things that really appeal to our youth. And it makes it taste better. So when they inhale this, it's not like inhaling a cigarette that doesn't taste so good. It tastes like candy. And so that's part of why these substances have really taken off and are, such an epidemic. Marketing. So Juul and these other companies similar have used social media. They have used social influencers to market their products. They're allowed to market on TV. They're allowed to market in our convenience stores or grocery stores. If you've ever gone to pay for gas, there's tons of these products right there at the cash register. And then the last reason is it has become such a social norm. So everybody's doing it. They're saying, everybody's got one. They're passing it around. This is another example of some of the marketing strategies towards young people. And so these were some of the earlier commercials that Juul and Blue, which is a kind of another type of e-cigarette, have used. And as you can see, those are, young people. There's young, young-looking dress and that sort of thing. So they're not marketing to adults, as they say. This is geared towards our youth. And then this is a picture of, if you haven't been in a convenience store lately, because like me, I usually just pay for gas at the pump and go. It is, it's crazy to walk in and all the products right there at the cash register. Another reason I've heard from our dear teens that they use these products is because of it reduces stress. A lot of people also, have said this when they are using cigarettes. It makes them feel less anxious, reduces stress. But smoking and using nicotine products, that is definitely a myth and not correct. It does make stress worse. It causes your heart rate, blood pressures to spike, making it your heart, having to work a little bit harder. It constricts the veins, and when you do have a puff of nicotine, you start to have those withdrawal symptoms, which then creates a cycle of having to use it to stave off the withdrawal. This is a study an early study, and I think there's been more out there and more evidence to support this, is that teens who had previously not used regular combustible cigarettes but picked up the e-cigarette use have then turned back to combustible cigarettes. So whereas they probably wouldn't have smoked combustible cigarettes before, now they're hooked on nicotine and they're turning to combustible cigarettes. I actually read a news article yesterday where the young adult was stating that he was actually turning back to cigarettes to try to quit altogether because cigarettes have less nicotine in it than the e-cigarettes. So he was trying to wean himself off of the Juul by using combustible cigarettes. Excuse me. So why does all this matter? Why do we talk about nicotine addiction in general? And it's because of brain development, especially for our teens and our young adults. This is so important. They are at the height of their neuroplasticity. We know that this is the best time for them to learn new information. And so when we talk about our brain functions, we have the lower parts, the oldest parts of our brain, the reptilian brain that it's called here, that help with that lung functions. It's our heart rate, our breathing. That's all those sort of things we just need to have to keep alive. And then we have our other primary structures, the amygdala, the hippocampus, which are in charge of memories and learning and sort of that process. And then the higher functions, which is our frontal cortex, our prefrontal cortex. which is sort of the last thing that gets developed in young people. It takes to be about age 25 before that's fully developed. And that's the part where we have our higher functioning, our decision making, our planning. It helps us to think through decisions and what the consequences might be. So a very important part of our brain that we want to fully develop in our youth. Again, what are executive functionings? That prefrontal cortex. Those are inhibitory control, to be able to resist urges, to fight temptations and resist their impulses. Working memory, to be able to hold and manipulate information, be able to kind of take in a couple of different things and be able to make decisions. Cognitive flexibility, again, being able to adjust what you're doing through the day. If you are, use this example the other day, if you're coming to work and there's a traffic jam, being able to be flexible enough to go, okay, I'm going to go this other route. Those are all higher functioning cognitive abilities. And so we talk about normal development. As you can see, that prefrontal cortex is kind of the last thing to sort of be developed. Is from the 5-year-olds here on the left to the 20-year-old, kind of turns more blue, and that's just more myelination, and things kind of make better connections as we get older. And so, again, like I said, this prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until around age 25, and nicotine is what is disrupting this process. So I'm going to show some
Wondered
video.
what's going on in your brain when you puff a cigarette? This is a tale of two chemicals, the nice and the not so nice, and what happens when they meet. Nicotine is fast and it's sneaky. Like an Olympic sprinter, it races into the lungs. From the lungs, it enters the blood and reaches the brain within seconds of that first puff. The brain is made up of many cells called neurons. Nicotine actually affects pathways in the brain called the reward pathway. The reward pathway is a normal and important part to our survival. It's the area of the brain which makes us feel good every time we eat or do something we enjoy. Once nicotine arrives at this area of the brain, nicotine attaches itself to the receptor on neurons, like a lock fitting in a key, and this wakes up the reward pathway of the brain. This is where dopamine comes in, the nice chemical. When the reward pathway is activated, dopamine gets released and we feel warm and fuzzy and satisfied. However, too much repetitive stimulation of the reward system can be dangerous, especially with nicotine. Nicotine hijacks the reward pathway, attaching to a nicotine receptor to release dopamine and convincing the brain that we need another cigarette. Every time we smoke, we get that feeling of reward, and so we do it more. This sets up an unhealthy pattern as nicotine tricks the brain into activating those warm and fuzzy feelings with every puff. This causes changes in the brain over time. The longer you smoke, the more and more receptors are created, and each one is craving its nicotine fix. Over time, the body learns that it needs nicotine to feel good, but it can never get enough. That's why it's so hard to quit. The longer we smoke, the stronger the cravings for nicotine become. With no nicotine to bind into nicotine receptors, the reward pathway is not stimulated anymore. This means there is less dopamine. With less dopamine, people get withdrawal symptoms. The good news is that these changes in the brain start returning to normal the longer you go without a cigarette. Getting past the first stage of withdrawal when you quit can be hard, with lots of empty nicotine receptors screaming out for their fix. But the good news is that over time there are fewer and fewer nicotine receptors as your brain goes back to the way it was before you smoked.
All right, that explained how nicotine works in the brain a lot better than I could, but, and that's why this matters. I don't know about you, but as the older I have gotten, the more I value my brain cells and wish they worked as well as they can. And so, you know, any kind of substance that is entering the brain and changing the reward center and changing the way it's developing, I think is extremely concerning. There are some studies that show that that youth who use tobacco and are addicted to nicotine are at risk for different mood disorders, major depression, and anxiety disorders. There was a very large study that showed that it can even decrease IQ levels, even at secondhand smoke levels, that was decreasing IQ. And it also affects the memory, you know, the centers, those hippocampus areas where we're forming our memories, and, you know, can make ADHD and ADD worse. And of course, obviously, it's setting our brain up for addiction. So those are all good reasons to stay away from the nicotine products and other addictive substances. But so how do we convince our young people to not use these substances? You know, we can't be with our teens every single day. They've got to make their own decisions, and we hope that we can do the best we can to provide the information to them that they need to make good decisions. And so we're just going to go over a couple little different things into this presentation here really quickly. And I have got all this information on a flyer on a table on the back, so if this is something that you want to take with you, it's back there for you to go home with it, because it's a lot of stuff. But so one of the things that we sort of talk about at the Coalition is that having a substance-free life is a gift. It's a gift to the person who goes through life without being addicted to a substance. It is a gift to the family and the community that, you know, that they can carry throughout their life. And so this is, you know, this kind of talking to them is about, you know, helping them to take care of themselves. Again, we talked about this already, that our brain, that air traffic control center, that prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning is managing all these different places and information, goals and tasks. And one of the things to realize when we talk about our youth and substance use, that of course no use of substances is the best brain development possible, right? Your brain's going to grow the best it can. Sometimes they may experiment. They may use some, you know, the nicotine products. They may take a puff or two, and that may lead to some risky behaviors. It may lead, if they're using alcohol or other substances that lessen their judgment, it may lead to some violence, some injury, maybe embarrassment if they get caught by Officer Camper here. But their brains are going to recover. We've got moderate use. They're using a little bit more. They're using it to manage maybe some anxiety and some depression symptoms. And then we're over into the heavy use, where they're using maybe every day or, you know, a couple times a week, and we're getting to substance use disorder. So we're going to talk about just a couple of things that I like to call LOVE, positive communication. It's short for listening, offering, validating, and empathy. So this is kind of just a little word that can help you communicate with our teens. So using effective listening skills is having and asking open-ended questions, using affirmations back to the person that you're talking to, reflective listening, and then summarizing what someone's just said. So this is actually based off of motivational interviewing techniques, if you've ever heard of that. And again, this is a skill that is meant to be practiced a lot, so I don't want to assume that, you just take this and go with it. It's a skill. Open-ended questions are things like, when you're talking to your teen or young person, you know, what do you think you'll do next? And that opens up, you know, a conversation, hopefully a dialogue, not just a one-word answer back to you. like these. You know, did you drink tonight? No. You know, why are you late? You know, those are what our teens I tend to find like to go to. Just short, quick answers. They don't want to elaborate. And closed questions are not necessarily bad, but they don't convey, you know, a conversation. So affirmations is finding the positive. I know for myself, as a parent of a 14-year-old, it is very hard sometimes to remember to find the positive instead of going, you know, get off the screens and go clean your room. And so it is, you know, good to catch them doing something good, and showing them appreciation, giving them compliments, instead of all of the interaction is just fussing and telling them what to do. You know, that sometimes feels like what I do, but remembering to, you know, have some positive in there. And summary. So when you are having a conversation and they, you know, maybe offering up some good information to you is summarizing what they just said. And this is a good technique for any conversation that you have, but especially with our teens, is just repeat back, okay, so this is what this is what I heard you say, blah, 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 blah. And not only does that tell them that you're actually listening to them, but it could correct any misinformation. Maybe you didn't quite get the gist of what they were saying, and so they can either have the opportunity to correct you so that you make sure that you're understanding what they're saying. It's like this example. So you feel like your teacher is being mean. You are being tested on materials that you haven't covered in class. You know, what else? That's, again, ending that summary with a question so that they have the opportunity to say, you know, continue that dialogue. Offering the information sandwich. Again, another technique in motivational interviewing is when someone, you know, you are having a conversation and you have a suggestion for them, is actually asking permission. Can I offer you some information back? Can I offer you an opinion? If they say yes, then you provide that information, and then you check to make sure that they understand. And that you want to kind of stay away from going, did you understand what I just said to teens? Because it's very kind of insulting. But, you know, asking, hey, you know, what do you think about that suggestion? Is that something you think maybe you could try? Validating. So sometimes our young people can have very intense emotions. They go through a lot of hard things that us as adults may be like, yeah, it's not that big a deal, but we need to validate their feelings. We need to, you know, let them know that we understand that this is hard for them and that we understand why they would feel that way, and validate, you know, what's going on with them. And then having empathy. So really, you know, having some empathy for what they're telling you, what they're going through, genuine caring. You may not know exactly what's happening in their world, but to, you know, to offer up some genuine empathy can go a long way. And again, that does not just for our teens, but for anybody that we deal with every day. So like I said, there's a lot of information, and motivational interviewing is a skill that is to be practiced and practiced and practiced. And every time I give this training, that it's a reminder for myself also to go home and practice, practice, practice. And so that's why I have the informational sheets back there, so that you can take this information back home, you know, practice the skills, either with, you know, your young adult, practice it with another adult, so that you can get better at this and get feedback from them. But anyway, does anybody have any questions on all that lots of information? All right.
Interstate Awning, the best awnings under the sun. We have over 12 years experience designing and installing custom awnings. We serve commercial, residential, and boats, offering vinyl, canvas, metal, backlit awnings, retractable awnings, custom signs, and entrance canopies. Whatever your needs are for protection from the sun and making your world a little cooler, we're here for you. For a free estimate, call Interstate Awning today or visit us online.